Hello and welcome. My name is Cynthia Oraduba, and I am your host today. And joining me is Kathy Burnett. Wave, Kathy, and say good morning. Is
Good
the
morning.
she is our co-host, and she's going to be managing all the behind the scenes things to make this webinar go well today. Today, avoid sticky situations and increase your coaching impact through intentional engagement with our speaker, Julie Hess. Let me just share a little bit about Julie Hess. Julie Hess has over 25 years of experience helping clients achieve breakthrough results. Today, she divides her time between her executive coaching practice and developing other coaches as a coach supervisor, educator, and speaker. In 2022, Julie co authored Do Your Best Coaching, an Amazon #1 hot release. A companion workbook launched globally in 2023. Julie holds an MBA from the Kellogg Graduate School of Business, a PCC from the IFA, and is a CSA accredited coach supervisor. The floor is yours, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It is great to be here with all of you today. And I see some familiar faces, and that makes me feel great. And anybody who's not a familiar face will be friends by the end of this. So it's perfect. So thanks for joining today. Today we're going to talk a little bit about bringing intentionality into your coaching practice as a way of increasing your impact and avoiding some of the sticky situations we can get into that happen to all of us as coaches. So I'm going to start and tell you a little bit about how I got into this topic, and then we're going to dive right in. I'd like this to be really interactive. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. I hope we'll have time for them. If not, I'll give you my contact information at the end, and we can make sure we stay in touch and you can ask questions that way. So how did I get interested in the topic of, I would call it sticky situations. That was the initial hook for me around intentionality. It started, we published a book in 22. It probably started in 2020. You might realize that that was in the middle of the pandemic. I was talking to one of my dear friends and colleagues, and at that time we were both coaching a lot of new coaches. We're both supervisors. We both work with people going through certification. And we realized that the coaches that we were working with were coming up against the same sticky situations over and over again. And my inside voice when I would hear that is like, oh no, if you had just done this beforehand, you wouldn't be in this situation. And Laura had similar experiences. We realized as we were talking that day that we had worked really hard over the years to build approaches so that we didn't end up in those sticky situations anymore. And that day we got really excited about the idea of sharing that with other coaches. We really didn't think about it as a book at that time. I mean, we were talking about a book, but we're like, maybe it's a class, maybe it's a webinar, we don't know. We got excited about it though, and we started researching and we started talking to coaches and we started investigating all the things that get in the way of us doing our best coaching and what experienced coaches do to avoid it. And about a year into it, we had a book. We were almost done, and it was just missing something. It's like the salt that's not in the soup. And at that point, I heard Pam McLean speak. Pam McLean is the head of the Hudson Institute. She was speaking at a supervision conference, and I'm going to share screen and show you what she said. Hang on, there we go. Yeah, this is what she said. She said it's very easy for experienced coaches to fall into habit. Meaningful conversations about what we do as coaches and why gives us the opportunity to be intentional about our practices and re-energize our work. And I had that eureka moment. I was like, this is what it's about. It's important for us to know what to do, but it's also about being intentional about the why we're doing it, being thoughtful about not just the tasks that we're doing, but why and the connection and what it does for our coaches and our coaching engagements. I don't even think I stayed for the rest of the conference. I called Laura, and that was really the genesis of the intentional engagement model, which I'm going to share with you later today. So let me just dive right in. And first, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do, and then we're going to get right to work together. So here's what we're up to today. We're going to talk about that intentional engagement framework. But we're going to very quickly, and in fact, we're going to start with sticky situations, but we're going to look at that framework and play with it through the lens of sticky situations, because it just makes it really practical and brings it to life for all of us as coaches. I'm going to give you a tool to play around with yourself and put you into breakouts to talk about it. Another way to take the learning off the page and kind of put it in a practical way and share some best practices with each other. And also just a really great opportunity to continue to strengthen connection and community, because one of our core commitments as we were writing the book is about coaches learning together in community. It's lonely being a coach. So we are there for our clients. They're not there for us. And so having these relationships, I think, is incredibly important. So what is a sticky situation? Well, I mentioned we interviewed over and surveyed over 50 coaches, and we ended up with, there's an appendix that has 37 sticky situations. But what is that? It's anything that gets in the way of you doing your best work as a coach. So in a minute, I'm going to show you the top 10 sticky situations. But if you think about it, it's your client perhaps resisting assessment, or it might be somebody from HR or a sponsor asking you to breach confidentiality, and you have to go back and you have to unwind and spend time talking about that and doing that. It could be that you're working harder than your client. I know that's one that we've all been in. So it's just really anything that gets in the way of you having those meaningful conversations with your clients. So here's the top 10 sticky situations that we've heard about from experienced coaches. And as I talk to people all around the world, these are the ones that come up over and over again. So what I'd like to do is ask you to open your chat and just look at these 10 and put the numbers in of the sticky situations that you found yourself. It'd be great to just go across this community and see what you've come up against. And please don't be shy, because the reason those 10 are up there is because I guarantee you I've done all of them. So there's no pride here. We'll share as a community. And as we're talking about this, I'll just maybe give you a little color commentary while you're putting things into chat. So not starting strong and regretting it is one I know has happened to me. That is when your client shows up and you had a great chemistry call and you feel like you know them, and they drop in and they've had something happen, and you start coaching right away. And about 2 or 3 sessions into it, you're like, oh my God, I didn't lay a foundation. I don't know things about my client that I really need to know. And now I have to go back and redo that. So how do you avoid, how are you present to be able to coach for your client if they have an emergent issue, but also be able to lay that foundation and do that properly? We got a lot of 1579. I say a lot of 1579. A lot of 8s that you're working harder than your client. That one comes up all the time. Let's see what else we have. Lots of 8s, lots of 7s. Concern that coaching feels stalled. Yeah, we're going to get to all of these today. So I hope you see, though, just by this chat, that you're A, not alone, and B, that hopefully by the end of this, you'll have some good ideas so that you don't fall into these sticky situations. So, all right, let's keep going. So what is this? Well, it's the framing of a house. And if you walk by a house that's being built, this is what it looks like. And, you can basically see the rooms, but they're not covered up. If you walk by a week later, this is all covered up with drywall, probably not paint yet. And yet the framing is still there, right? This is what holds the house. It is what holds the space for the rooms. What happens if that framing isn't there? The rooms collapse on themselves. So what I would say is that this is a perfect metaphor for intentional engagement. So as the framing of a house holds space for the rooms, Intentional engagement holds space for the coaching conversations and relationships you're building with your client. If you are taking the time to be intentional about how you start, set up, manage, and pull through your engagement all the way to close, you will have the space to do the deep work you want to be doing with your clients. So let's look at the actual framework now. We've seen the frame of the house. Let's look at the framework. It is four phases, and there's 7 components inside. And we're going to go through all of these, and I promise you I'll make the link to sticky situations as we go through it. So 4 phases: creating the container, establishing the through line, making progress, and ending with meaning. And as I said, each of these 7 are the components that sit within those phases. So what do you see here? What happens in here? Creating the container. I have a sticky slide. There we go. I think creating the container starts from the first call. It could be an inquiry from HR. It could be an inquiry from your client. Certainly happens during the chemistry call. It is those initial contacts where you have the opportunity to start building that foundation for your coaching relationship with your client and with the organization. So really helping them understand, who are you as a coach? What does coaching look like? What's important? What are the boundaries and confidentiality that you're going to be following? Opportunity to align on the process and the responsibilities, all the things that could get in the way later on. I am also a big believer in a great intake process. So I have an intake form that I send to every single client. I ask them to fill it out. And what it does is it gets them, well, I get their demographic information. I have it all in one place then, so I'm never like looking for their cell phone number. But also, it gets them thinking. It asks them questions like, why coaching? Why now? How do you learn best? How could I get in the way of you making progress? It puts them into a coaching mindset. And so when they show up at that first meeting, they are already in a coaching mindset. And guess what? If they show up in the first meeting and they have something that's blowing up at work and they want to talk about it, they know that we're going to be doing some intake. So even if we use the majority of the session to talk about that emergent issue, there's an expectation that we're also going to get to know each other. Maybe we take a few minutes at the end, or we say, hey, in our next session, we're going to pick this up with some intake and really build that foundation for trust. So that helps us avoid that sticky situation. Now, you as experienced coaches know that creating the container does not end with intake. It'll continue while you're establishing the through line, but we'll move on to starting to help your client really understand, where are they today? Where do they want to go in the future? And what insights can they build about themselves? It's all about building self-awareness and then turning that into a coaching plan. So this phase really is about helping them build self-awareness. We're going to do that through assessment. It could be self-assessment. It could be a 360 assessment. In the workbook that we have a table that shows all the different types of assessments, when you might use them, why. There's just so many of them. And contrary to many people's belief, assessment doesn't only have to happen at the beginning of an engagement. It can happen at any, I think a 360 is very helpful at establishing the through line, but there are other assessments that can refresh or support or deepen an engagement later on. So establishing the through line, you're doing assessment. Now, anybody who knows me knows I am passionate about creating a vision for the future with my clients. I am an aspirational coach. I think a vision and values work creates a pull mechanism for your client. Without it, coaching can feel very heavy and can get a little stalled sometimes. So while I am doing the 360 assessment, I am having my client engage in some vision and values work. They're really thinking about, who am I today? Who do I want to be in the future? And we are going to bring that vision and values work together with the assessment to create their coaching plan, their goals and their coaching plan. And that will be the foundation of a meeting with the sponsor. If you're an internal or external coaching of a sponsor, a meeting where we sit down and say, hey, this is the client. I'm going to prepare my client to do this with their their sponsor. I'll be there to support. This is what I learned through the assessment, and here's what I'd like to do so that I can move forward and achieve this vision that I've created for myself. Great opportunity to get the sponsor engaged and supportive, and give any feedback if we're missing something in that coaching plan before we get too far down the path. So what comes next? Well, it's making progress, but it's different than the making progress that you might think about. So you might think about, okay, the coaching conversations that I'm having. You are all experienced coaches. I know you know how to have great coaching conversations. Making progress here is really about, how am I showing up for the coaching conversation? How am I preparing myself so that I show up and I'm present and that I can maintain presence? How am I helping my client be present? How am I reflecting afterwards so that I'm making sure I'm catching nuances I might have missed in the moment and providing development opportunities for myself? You also see midpoint alignment check. I'm a big believer in this. I actually do it with my supervision groups and my coaching clients. It's an opportunity to press pause and say, how are we doing together? What's working really well? What might we want to change so that we make sure that we're getting everything we can out of this engagement? I always say to my clients, please, please give me constructive feedback, because if there's something happening that you need help, you want me to shift, I can't do it unless you tell me about it. So on a longer engagement, we're also doing an alignment check with the sponsor, another three-way meeting. How's it going? Great opportunity for them to notice progress in the client, another opportunity. And then finally, we move on to ending with meaning. And I will tell you that this is when I was writing the book, I realized how bad I was at closing coaching conversations. I don't really like to end coaching conversations. I really like coaching. I'm into the conversation, and sometimes I would lose track, and I'd be like, oh my God, we're almost at the end. So this is all about making sure that the ending of a coaching relationship, ending coaching engagement, is as meaningful and as impactful as the work that's come before it. So giving your client a heads up, we're coming on to the closing. How do we want to create the ending for each other together? I will send my clients questions in advance for them to reflect on. Sometimes I'll do a progress assessment. I'll circle back to people I did the 360 with and just ask them one or two questions to give some feedback on how they're doing. We also have a meeting with the sponsor to show them what I would call an ongoing development plan. So every client that I work with has an ongoing development plan, because the end of coaching is not the end of their development. We want to engage the sponsor so that they see the progress that's been made and they can be supportive of the progress that is going to come. So that is the intentional engagement framework. And because you're all experienced coaches, there's a lot that goes into it. So one of the things that we've done is that last component, closing. We've created these little process maps for each of them, because there's so much that goes into every aspect. So up top, you'll see here, these are all the things we do with our client, right? During the closing portion. These are all the things we have to do just ourselves. And keeping track of all those things and making sure you're thinking about them is important. Now, I am going to tell you, and I'm going to go back to this for a moment. Again, it's not just the what you're doing, but it's the why. That's really important. It's important for your client to understand too, because sometimes they'll wonder, why are we doing this? And it's like, oh, because this is what's going to help you sustain, install these changes, make you successful moving forward. Now, I know that looks like a lot in just one aspect of a coaching engagement. And what I would tell you, and Laura and I talk about this all the time, this is a perspective that we offer you. It is not a prescription. So I don't do every single thing exactly the same for every coaching client, because they're all different. You can choose what's useful to you and leave what's not useful to you behind. But having this idea of what's possible and what can help me structure can help me think about how to have more impact and how to avoid sticky situations. So now we're back to these 10 sticky situations that we had before. And I've now kind of bucketed them by those 4 phases. And you can see that if you're attending to these different aspects that we've talked about, you're going to be able to avoid these sticky situations. Now, not 100% of the time, but most of the time. So, for example, if I'm doing a good job in an inquiry conversation with HR, and I sense that somebody's pulling me into a rescue mission, and just for clarification, a rescue mission is when an organization is really thinking about letting somebody go. They're like, oh, we got to get them, at least give them one more chance. We've got to give them some coaching so that we got to check that box. I don't do that kind of coaching. It's rarely successful, and it's not great for the organization. Good coaching culture is focused on using coaching to support people's development, not to check the box before they let them go. So if I'm doing a good job in an inquiry conversation, I am sussing that out and I'm asking questions. Okay, I know this person has challenges. Do they have the support of the organization? Tell me how. Tell me what's going on. How are they thinking about this? So if I've done a good job up front explaining the coaching process, and I'm going to show you a little tool we used for that later on, my client's not going to be surprised later on when I ask them about assessment or vision and values. So they're not going to be resisting that because they know it's coming and they know why we're doing it. Same thing with, coaching plan and goals. I saw lots of you talk about that I'm working harder than my client, or coaching feels stalled as a sticky situation. I can tell you that 9 out of 10 times, the reason that coaching feels stalled or you're working harder than your client is because there's not a sufficient coaching plan in place. And the coaching plan itself, actually, like the artifact of a coaching plan, yeah, it's important, but what's really important is the conversation and work that led to getting to that coaching plan, so that client is really engaged in owning those goals and understands why it's important to them. And we also know that's what we're working on. So if something comes up, because things always come up, we can move away from what we're working on, talk about what's emerging, and then go back. We're never going to get like really knocked off our pace. So let's see. Knowing you're not at your best in coaching sessions. So there's a story in Do Your Best Coaching that is totally mine. And here's the funny story about it. So it is the story about how, I think it's on page like 109. It's about how this coach was working really hard and running from client to client and, feeling really successful, but not really feeling like they were doing their best job as a coach because they didn't have time to fully land with their clients and be present and do all the things that they wanted to do. And the funny part of that story, that is all me. I was in that phase years ago. One of my friends called me up after the book was published, and he's like, hey, that story on page 109, is that me? I started laughing and I'm like, no, Seth, that's not you, that's me. But it's this common experience that we all have across all of these things. So I am going to pause. I'm going to stop sharing. And I want to, if I can find the stop sharing button, hang on just a minute. There it is. I'm going to give you guys a moment, see if any questions are popping up. And then I'm going to give you a little tool to work on for a moment. So what's on your mind? You can throw
Raylan
something
has,
into
she
chat. I'm sorry, go ahead. You can
She
say
said, "Are
something.
your coaching plans documented? I'm curious about how you referenced aligned coaching plans to during
Mhm.
sessions."
Yes, in the workbook and the book, there's examples of coaching plans. And in fact, I have one in the presentation. And when I share screen again, I'll just show it to you. So yeah, there's a couple of examples of them.
And
Other,
can you share your in-engagement reflection questions?
yeah, of course, those also in the book and the workbook. I actually just am wrapping up an engagement. I'm going to pull them up and share them with you, but they tend to be questions like reflect back on the work that we've done together. Where have you seen significant shifts? What are you most proud of? What impact has it had on you, your colleagues? I mix them up based on, I change them up based on the client, But really, the whole goal of an end reflection question is to get your client reflecting on what the work that's happened and what they want to pull forward and harvest so they can bring forward. So it's really just, what are you most proud of? Oh, what's undone? What do we still want to work on? We haven't coached. I mean, if I'm having a 6-month coaching conversation, can't do everything. So what do you want to pull forward and be focused on? Other questions? I want to give you a chance to work with each other, and I also want to give you a chance to do a little work on your own. So what I would love to do now, and you can continue to put, I'm going to share screen. You can continue to put questions in the chat. I wonder if I can ask one of my partners in crime to put the assessment into the meeting chat, and I'm going to share screen. So in just a minute, you're going to get in your chat a document you can download. It looks like this. It's two-sided. So the back side looks like this. And what it is an opportunity for you to self-assess and think about, here's the 4 phases of the intentional engagement framework. See where you think you're doing real well, and where might you have some energy to refresh something in your practice. If it's something, maybe you used to do it, but you forgot and you don't do it anymore. Or maybe it's something you want to learn about or think about. I was just talking to the ladies before we started. I love vision and values work, and I think my next webinar is going to be on vision and values, because there's so many fun, creative ways to bring that to your clients. So let me see. I'm going to drop this in the assessment into the chat. Hang on, give me 1 minute. Stand by. Yep, that's it. There you go. Okay, see if you guys can, is that in your chat for everyone? You can download it and you just click on it in the chat, and it's a fillable. You can fill into it right on the on screen, or you can print it. So, take a few minutes. Let's just take, 2 or 3 minutes and start to fill it out yourself and see what you notice about yourself in your coaching. And then we're going to do some discussion about it, okay? And I'm going to read these questions so I can address them. I'm wondering if it's okay if I put you into breakouts. Is it too fast? Okay, let me share screen. This is what we're going to be doing in breakouts. So you've just done a self-assessment. At least you start to have an idea of where you want to focus. So we're going to go into groups of 3. Start with your strengths. What are you really good at? What's the best practice? And then what's an opportunity that you want to start to be curious about, and maybe as a trio, pick one and come back and bring a best idea that you can put into the chat, and we're going to save it so we can share it with everybody. But where is your energy going? And I'm going to answer all of these questions when we come back. So let's go into breakouts of 3. If my everybody's coming back. I hope you guys had good, rich conversations and learned some things from each other. The number one complaint I always have about breakouts, and I know other people do, is that we didn't give you enough time. So I hope that felt spacious enough to you, and that you got to meet some people and learn some things from each other. Could I ask you all to just throw in the chat, what is one best practice or one opportunity? What did you learn from each other? Something you want to share with the community? And while you're doing that, we had some really amazing questions come up before we went into breakout. I'm going to answer some of them. I'm going to show you a few tools. And then can you believe it? Our time is going to be over. It went so fast. So but there were such great questions. And I want to start with Sarah's question. How does this apply to non-business coaching? My experience is, because I do some life coaching, it completely applies. You just don't think about the sponsor. So you still have the arc of the coaching relationship. You're still building that container. You're still establishing the through line. What are we working on? Where are we going together? You're going to make progress and you're going to close. So perhaps some of the more formalized things that happen in a corporation, you just leave behind. But those other things are quite relevant. So assessments for non-corporate clients, I use an IQ 9 assessment all the time with my clients. That's an Enneagram assessment. I'm sure you have assessments that work well for you. I'm going to show you the table that I talked about. I have it in this presentation about all the different um, uh, assessments that are available. So Sarah asked about the conversation with, wait, oh God, everything jumped down and I lost Sarah's question. There it is. The question about the ongoing development plan when the client wants to keep the 360 assessment themes private. Great question. So I always encourage my client to think about, so here's, I'm just going to say this is my bias. There are no secrets in organizations. People know what is going on. If there's a sponsor and a client, the sponsor is going to know what the learning edges are, or at least somewhat. So my job as a coach is to support my client in thinking about how can I frame the insights that I got, the assessment themes, in a way my sponsor can hear it and I feel comfortable with. And how can I translate that into a coaching development plan so that they see that I heard it and I'm going to make progress on it. So I think it's more about not really keeping it. You don't have to, I would never share a 360 with a sponsor or HR unless it was contracted ahead, and I just don't do that. I support my client in sharing what is meaningful and how they want to share it. But I think it shows real commitment and development to be able to look, nobody's perfect. Everybody's got something. Here's what I'm working. So, and then there was another question I want to answer. Just 1 minute. I'm going to find it. I do not ask my clients, Layla, to complete a reflection form in advance. I just offer them the questions and then we talk about them. Kim Har was in my group, so we talked about rescheduling, and we already answered Layla's other 2 questions. Great questions for everybody. So let's see. Oh, rigor creates the space. Ted Whetstone, that I'm going to steal that from you. That's terrific. Just looking to see what you, these are great. Setting up agreement up front. Yes. With the sponsor and the client. Co-creating closure. Yes. Wonderful discussions. It sounds like you had great discussion.
Can we add one verbally here?
Can you put it in the chat so I can show you things and then we can talk about it? That would be amazing. I'm going to share a screen because I am running up against time, but thank you, Barry, for asking. Okay, one thing I wanted to just be able to show you are some of the tools we've been talking about tools, and I don't want you to, I don't want to just talk about them, I want to show them to you. So there's a book and a workbook. Some of these are from the book and some are from the workbook. In the first part about creating the container, we actually talk about questions you should be prepared to answer so that you can be ready for a coach for a chemistry call. And you'll see we always have these little boxes, these coach considerations, things to support your learning. Here is a tool I'm going to give to you at the end of this session. This is an illustrated coaching process. This, unlike the intentional engagement framework, which is a coach facing process. And I will say this, like the framing of a house, your intentional engagement process framework should be invisible to your client. This is what we're doing behind the scenes to provide a good coaching engagement, good coaching experience. This, what you're seeing on your screen, is what I use often to walk my clients through at the beginning. Here's what we're doing and here's why. So the actions are what we're doing. Remember I talked about the what and the why. The outcomes are the why. And so if I'm doing this at the beginning of a coaching engagement, my client has a chance to ask all those questions about, going back to Sarah's question about the assessment. And, do I have to share my assessment? No, but it's going to really be to your benefit to have your sponsor supporting you and knowing what are just the high level themes that you're noticing. It shows that you're really engaged in the process. So this is a tool that I use all the time, and I'm going to put this in the chat for you and you all can download it and have it for your use. I also, like I said, I don't do everything in this every time, and I will tell my clients, we may not do all of this, but here's an idea of what the arc looks like. There are a lot of sample emails in the workbook. This is one for a context call with a sponsor. This is what I was talking about. I get a lot of questions about assessments. So in the workbook, we have this table that talks about what's the category of assessment, a type or an example, actual tools, and how you might use them. We have a different table that talks about, I mentioned this before, timing, of assessments, like what could you use in the middle of an engagement or at the end of an engagement to enrich the engagement. So that may be useful and helpful to you. I'm hurrying, I'm keeping an eye on the time. So here, let's keep going. This, we got some questions about. This is an example of a development plan. So at the top, it's anchored by the client's vision statement. Now, I often will have my client have a broader vision statement than just work. It talks about who they want to be as a person too, because let's face it, we bring ourselves to work every single day. So you can't ignore that. What you'll see here is that, and this is obviously condensed because it was in the book, but it's got the goal. What are you doing? Start, stop doing. What's the impact of actually doing it? And then how will I know those success markers if I'm doing it? So we've got that. Lots of discussions with coaches from our interviews about how you do things like manage your calendar, take notes, just all different ways that coaches do that. And all these little top tips that we've learned from our colleagues. This is about keeping meetings online. In the workbook, we have complete process checklists from start to finish for every single aspect. So we have those process flows are in there, but we also have this like little checklist where you can check off and make sure you're doing everything. And let's see what else we have. Oh, I love this. So at the beginning, we have questions you can reflect on for yourself, coach reflection questions. And these are the end year reflection questions. So who are you as a coach? Who do you want to be? What have you learned about? What do you want to do, apply to your learning? Because in the book, the last chapter is about your own development as a coach, something we don't often pay attention to. How do you create a strategy for your own development? What are the different types of development you might create for yourself? Things like that. So that is all I have for you. I'm going to go back and look at the chat a minute and see if there's any questions. But before I do that, we'll put in the links to all sorts of resources for you. You can find the book and workbook on Amazon, but we also have a LinkedIn page for the book that is just content for coaches. It's just to give back to coaches. It's all sorts of content. We have a website, Do Your Best Coaching. If you have read the book or you're going to, and you would consider giving us a review, we would really appreciate it because it helps, mostly just because it helps other coaches find the book. The more reviews, the more it pops up in their feed. And honestly, this book was a true labor of love. We just want to help coaches do their best work, and not just the coaches, but their clients benefit from it. So I'm going to stop sharing. There's 10 new messages. Wow. Oh, Ted, thank you. Ted likes the book, the workbook. They go together. So you don't have to have one or the other, but they do work really well together. And Amy, the reason why there's a workbook and a book is because we were trying to do it in one book and it was so big that we had to break it into two. And Ted's nodding. So Ted, you could probably tell people maybe a little bit about the difference between the two. The workbook now has a blue cover because people were getting confused about it. Let's see what else. Are there any other questions that I can answer for you? Yeah, I please feel free, link in with me if you have any questions. I'm happy to help. It's just been wonderful spending time with all of you. Thank you for being such an amazing group. Like I said, I didn't know all of you at the beginning, but I see all your faces and now I look forward to seeing you at other webinars. All right, I am going to close. Thank you so much. You all were wonderful. I loved it. And I'm going to hand it back over to Cynthia.
Well, that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. I knew it was going to be a great session from just meeting with her last week, and she over-delivered. So thank you very much. And thanks to all of you who came today, and not only who attended, but played full out, participating in the breakouts, both breakouts, and filling out the assessment. This concludes today ICF Los Angeles webinar with Julie Hess. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.